Yeah, I'm doing that.
All right, that's cool.
All right. So, examples of design system like I was talking about, we have Google Material Design, we have Apple Human Interface Guidelines, we have the IBM's Carbon Design System, and quite a number of them. At your leisure, you could just go through them and have a feel of what these design systems look like and how you can interact with them. So next, I'm going to be taking you guys on components of a design system, and from this part, I'm going to be sharing my screen. So yeah, let me take you guys straight to Figma because I think we've done enough of English. Screen one. Let me know when you guys see my screen, please. Are you see my screen?
Not yet.
No.
Okay, give me a minute. Let me try to set that up.
PC is not even on this call. The person that was saying she needs this class more. Okay, she'll watch the recording. But the idea of, before Victor is done with what he's doing, the idea of a design system is that when you have a lot of people working on the same projects, right? You find that, sorry, am I audible? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you have a lot of designers working on the same project, you find that you know a lot of times there will be inconsistencies. So um, one
Brian,
design
please give me access to share screen again.
I should okay. Let me. I think you are in control of everything now.
No, showing that
Host
host
said host
disabled
disabled
attempt.
participant screen sharing. Let me see.
Yeah, that was,
I think you need to enable it because you are basically the host now. Or do you want to give me back the host so that I will fix it, then you can continue.
yeah, please do that.
Okay, now you have to make me a host. You have to. All right. Okay. Um. All right. I think it's on now. You can try.
All right. Okay,
Right.
can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that small break in transmission.
So as I was
So
saying,
yes,
is to make sure that everyone is using the same thing, so that one person is not using one button and another person is using a different kind of button, or one person is using one kind of text, another person is using a different kind of text, so that there is consistency across the digital product. All right, Victor, you can continue, please.
all right, thank you. Um, so we're about getting into Figma. So the first component of a design system, I want to break it down into foundational elements. The first foundational element of your design system is your typography. Now, this includes your font family, the sizes, the weights, and their use cases. When you're consistent with your typography, you can create a very cohesive visual language. That's a very strong visual language. Now, let me show you a practical example of. Hello, is someone say something?
No, no, that's all right.
Okay. So let me show you typography in use. Now, the first step of setting up your typography, you determine the font you want to use. That's the first step. The second step is to determine the interface you want this typography to be applied to. Are you designing for web? Are you designing for mobile? Now, for web and mobile, there are different kinds of text. You have your header, you have your body text, you have your title, you have your captions, you have your subheadings, and all of that. So when creating your guide under typography, you have to specify which of the font properties is for what. Typical example: when you're designing your header text, call it your H1. Your header text for a website, being that is the header, you might say, okay, it should be very bold, it should be big in size, it should have good weight. Now, like this one, you can see specification here. At any point, if you can't hear me or see my screen, or if I'm moving too fast, just call me back. So this is the header. This is the header text. The weight here is medium. You can specify your line height as well, letter spacing, and the size. Then you go to your second header text. In case you want to apply a header in a space where uh, um, it's small, but you need a header text there. So you could specify your alternate header text. Most times we even do from H1 to H6 for just headers. And in most cases, the H1 is in the hero section of our website. That is the splash screen, so it can be very, very easy to read. So these are all header text. Like I said, specify your font weight, your font size. Very good practice. We are going to do this practically. This session is divided into two parts where I show you, then we'll build on ourselves practically. So, good practice. If your H1, that's your first header, is 64 for very wide spaces, your next header could be the next number close to 8. I think that is 56. Then you come down a bit, you have 48, down to your H6. So you could just keep specifying your header text like that from your H1 to H6 using the principles of 8. But in some extreme cases where you're designing with large fonts, you could start your header text, that's your H1, as large as 120 or 150, depending on what you're designing for. So after the header text, H1 to H6, the next thing is your label text or your body text. Let me zoom out so you see how this thing declines. Now let me get into something more practical so that understanding will be easier. Now this is one we created in the team. Now this is for display text. As you can see, it goes from very large to very small. They're all display text. So they have different sizes and different thickness. This is the other text I was telling you guys about. From 40, it keeps progressing downwards. I think progressing that word. It keeps going down. It keeps reducing. You see, H1, H2, H3, H4, depending on the size you're designing for, down to H6. Now, for your paragraph text, otherwise known as your body text, you could start it depending on the screen size as well. You could start it from 24. If it's a very large screen, you could do 32. But it's left for you and your team to decide what you're designing for. So 18, you see, and it has to be clearly specified, semi-bold, regular, underline, strike through, all of that. It has to be clearly specified. This is what you have under typography. Typography, like I said, includes the font family, the sizes, the weights, and their use cases. So I'm going to show you, after all of this, I'm going to get into a design file and show you how all of this is applied. The next thing we look out for is the color palette, which includes our primary colors, secondary colors, neutral colors, alongside usage guidelines. Now, when you use these colors consistently, it strengthens your brand identity. Meaning, anywhere that particular color is seen is immediately attributed to you and your brand, of course. Now, let me show you the color thing I was talking about in play. So, this is what we created for this particular project. Now, this is the primary color we went with. This is the secondary color. Then, of course, we have our grayscale colors. We have our alert states, seeing body here, success, information, meaning error. We have other colors that could just be used in random places of the system more practically. Then the next thing is a grid system. I think I have one here. Yes, grid system. Okay. Give you some that's okay, cheating. So the grid system is all about spacing, and it ensures that alignment and spacing doing your design system, and you write okay, header text and body text. Any other person that comes to the design and goes through that design system knows that okay, wherever I must give space between two texts, it has to be 32 because it has been specified in that design system. So you find out that even if you have 50 people working on the design file, it looks like it's just one person that's working on it because there's a system ground. So there's uniformity, there's consistency. So this is a great system. You know, this particular one is for a web app. So you could specify that okay, the size shouldn't exceed 272 pixels for whatsoever screen size you're designing for. You could agree that okay, the rest of the canvas shouldn't exceed a certain number of pixels, and the spacing in between each element should be at least 70 pixels. That is the standard you've set for this grid system. And also, when you have your collapse sidebar, it should be 80 pixels. And when you add all of this, you'd see the remaining space left. That is what you have in your grid system. So next, we are going to, okay, I've done color palette, done grid system. So let's go into UI components now. That is the cocoa for designing. The first three I've gone through are still very, very important. But now let's get into the actual things you use to give life to your designs. Now, under the UI components, we have buttons, forms, navigation element, and icons. I really like icons, so I'm going to start with icons. Uh, let's start from icons. Now, this is an icon pack we use on here as well. It's coming up, please. All this is loading. Are you guys following? Is there any confusion? Hello, I need responses. You can mute your mic and just answer while we are waiting for you. Okay, I'll call you people up. Okay, Titi, you wanted to say something?
I thought you were asking if you're audible, we're understanding what you're saying.
Yeah, are you following? Are you following?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. Adeyinka, how are you? Adeyinka Oduwole. Are you following? Your mic, you can mute your mic and just answer before you continue.
I have a quick question. This is sitting up concerning the
Okay.
spacing. Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
on a particular page or screen, is likely we have more than a particular spacing. For example, let's say section to section, like a particular section up, another section down. It's likely we have one kind of spacing, and in between that single section, we have another spacing. How do we specify that? And then lots of stuffs like that. How do we specify it so it won't cause confusion, and we won't just assume it's a single spacing, or someone is using maybe say 20, 22 or 20, and someone feels, oh, this is a bit small, and then change it, add maybe another whatever, still in the line of listed spacing. So we won't just, let's say we have the spacing organized in form of, let's say, from 20 to maybe 40, and then we're just picking at random in between the set spacing. I don't know if you get my blabbing.
Yeah, I get you. I get you.
Okay.
So, before this particular section I'm having with you guys, I'm having with you guys, I think Brian has done a few introductory classes to designing with white spaces and all of that. Now, there are certain space standards. If you're giving vertical spacing, rather, there are certain standards you could use. A very good one is using multiples of 8. Between two elements, let's say in a dashboard you're designing now, you have your wallet balance up and you want to add your chart below. That is vertical stacking now. You could specify that when you're stacking vertically like that, let the padding or the spacing be 64 pixels. But when you're now stacking horizontally, say you have wallet balance on the first, the second thing has to be total number of visitors, the third thing has to be one other key metrics like that. You could still specify that in between elements like that, you could have a spacing of 32. It's all subject to specification. And in the events where you'd have to do random placement, what you use there when you can't exactly get a figure, just make sure whatever figure you're using lands on a multiple of 8. That way your design still looks very neat, and anybody that still picks it up knows that, okay, this is the number we are following. Maybe sometimes you want to cover space up, maybe the white space is looking too much or it's looking too small. You could use a multiple of 8 there instead of just using 50 or 54, which would be too small. You could use something like 64. Then you have enough space in there. All this, you specify it when you're doing your grid documentation. Did I answer your question, Titi?
Yes. So I get it that specifying, let's say, between multiples of 4 or 8, if we do anything within that particular set, whatever, we're still okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Brian, your hand was up.
Yeah, let me add something. So in design systems, right? As Victor said, like you specify you specify use cases, right? So it's very unlikely for you to have like a card, a type of card in your design that nobody has ever used, and nobody has ever thought about. First of all, before you start thinking of like having design systems or having design systems for your products, right? You must have designed a couple of things, right? And you must have thought of, different use cases. And it's unlikely for you to design something that is so away from what you've, been designing normally. Then, if it turns out that you, maybe as a new designer, is coming into a company and you have their design system, and then they say that this is the kind of spacing that they have or that they use in scenarios like this, and then you use it, and then in your mind is telling you that this spacing is too much, or this thing is not looking nice. You should actually use it, because consistency in branding, which I think Abiola is going to take branding next week, consistency is more important than what is fine or what is not. So if your team has come together and said that this is what our design system is going to be, it is pertinent on you to be consistent with that design system. If you want to change anything, or you think something is too wide or whatever, you gotta meet the brand person, because that's not it's not your job. All right. Does that give you a little more context?
All right, thank you. Yes.
All right, thank you. So before that, we're getting into icons. So let me show you guys a typical icon library. Now, if you, like Brian said, when you come into a thing, like a team like Wella Health, for the past, I think 4 or 5 months, we've been comfortable using this icon set. It's difficult to use because you'd have to search manually, but the icons here work and they are well designed. So if you come as a new person and say, what kind of icons, all of this, and you want to bring in your own that you feel works well with you, you'll notice that there will be lots of inconsistency all over the design. So let me just take you guys through this icon set. So what we specified for our web apps in Wella Health is when you're using icons, they have to be from this particular library, one. And two, they have, for your sidebar elements, they have to have a thickness of 1 pixel. If it's for, what's the other thing called? In-page designs, you could use the regular 1.5 pixel, because by default, all of this is in 1.5 pixel. Then for the size, we specified that the icons should be 20 times 20 in smaller places, then 24 by 24 in larger spaces. So that is a system we've laid on ground for our icons. And this is a library. It's a very extensive library, covers pretty much everything. And this is what we've been working with. So next, I want to move you guys to buttons. Buttons. So buttons are a very crucial component in any UI. They have various states in which they come in. You have your default, hover, active, and disabled. Now, I think this was okay. This is what we use on Text currently. So, as you can see, this is an active button. You can see the label active. When you hover on it, this is how it should react. When it's active, this is what it looks like. All of this has to be specified before you even do handoff to your developer. Because I think before, okay, Adeyinka, your hand is up. You can ask your
Good
question.
morning, Mr. Victor. Yes, I have a
Morning,
question.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. All right, so concerning the icon, I want to ask, because usually the icon comes with a frame, like an external frame. So the 24 by 24,
Yes.
is it for the frame size or for the icon itself?
So let me go back here. I'll show you practically. In most of these icons here, let me zoom in. To answer your question, it's for the frame size. If you make any adjustments to this, let me change this to 20, it automatically edits the size of the icon inside. So yes, it's for the frame size. That's why we make use of this, because it has this auto layout sort of already. Your hand is up. Please go ahead. Adeyinka, your hand is up. Please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Sorry, I'm done asking. I forgot to lower my hand.
Oh, okay. So I said yes, it's for the frame size. You just pick it from here and set the size. This is it here, the width and the height. So if you make adjustments to either the width or the height, it applies in both cases. So I think we can proceed. We're on buttons, I think. Yes, so I was talking about the buttons. We have the active, cover, and inactive. So even before we get into designing, the first thing we try to do is hand over our design system to our engineering team. I think in the next few weeks, you guys will be collaborating on a project. So you hand over your design system to the engineering team so they can, start creating their own component library based on the design system you've done for them. Now, these are the button sizes. We have large, for very large screens. We have medium. We have small. We have buttons with icons, and we have some. Okay, these are not even all the kind of buttons we have. Let me see if we have either set of buttons here. Okay, but so sometimes you could have an outline button. You could have a button with an arrow. That is like a very kind of secondary button. Let me open this. So something like this. This is a button as well. It's a button. It's a link. When you click it, it takes you somewhere. So yes. So this is an icon button, like I mentioned. This is an outline button. This is a these two could serve as primary buttons because they are lighter than the colored ones. Then the heavily colored ones could serve as your, what am I saying? These ones are your secondary buttons. Then the heavily lighted ones serve as your primary buttons. Let me see if there's any use case for this here. Okay, good. Inside here, this is an input form. Okay, I think I'll just merge buttons and inputs so you'd see everything together. Now, this is a button. This continue with email. This is a button. Already have an account, login. This is also a button. So in this case, continue with email is your primary call to action. That's a CTA. Then this second one here is your secondary call to action. Primarily because that's the one you want people to click. But in the event that they don't click on that one, they could click on the secondary one. That is this. So I think I've done a good job explaining buttons. So let's get into forms. I think form falls under inputs. And where did I see that? So we use three design systems. Okay, personally, I use three design systems. I use Align UI, I use Untitled UI, and I use the one we designed at the team at Wella Health. So this is an input button. Then I'm going to take you back to the other screen to show you what a form is. So you could specify that for all your inputs, you should have certain kind of padding. Look at it. Look at the layout here. You could see, okay, the width could be 320, the height should be 40. Standard. Nothing in this life should make the form be less than this or more than this. You specify this for any design you're doing. Then you could also go ahead to specify padding inside. Okay, I want the text to be 12 pixels away, then 8 pixels from top and bottom. Then in the event that you an icon, you specify it as well. It should be 12, 12, 12 all around. That is for your input specification. Now you could go ahead to add labels, and these labels now, as you're adding the labels, this is how it should be in development too and in design. In the event that you want to add a hint, this should be the hint. In the event that the form is lighted up upon activation or upon interaction, like when you click on it and you're typing into it, it should have a colored border. This is what it should look like. But they want to specify it so that the engineers and the rest of your team members don't just send their minds away thinking of all of these use cases. In the event of an error message, it should look like this. It's all under specification. You could use any of these ones. I've seen some very error messages. I've seen some very creative error messages input forms. There are some that vibrate. There are some that move away from you as you're typing the wrong thing. There are some that, very crazy kinds of interaction. You're the one to determine what you want. It is the system you want people to use. You're the one creating it. So your work is to specify. So this is more into it. Let me see if there's a use case here. These people do not do use case. Okay, so back to align UI. So yeah, this is form I was telling you about. Now this is form and CTA. Now you have 3 secondary CTAs on this particular page. You can see continue with Google, continue with Apple, or you should use your email address to continue with email. And if you already have an account, you can log in. So let's count this 1, 2, 3. Those are 3 secondary CTAs. In the event that you do not have Google to continue with or Apple, you could continue with your email. And in the event that you also have an account, you can log in directly. That is how you apply multiple buttons. And you're the one to specify this in your system. That, okay, these are the kinds of buttons I want to use, and this is how they should be applied. So what is next?
By the way, let me ask. This to the class. Does anyone know the difference between a primary CTA and a secondary CTA, and why we have primary and secondary CTAs, and even tertiary CTAs? Anyone? Why do we have primary CTAs, secondary CTAs, and tertiary CTAs?
Okay, so I think for primary, secondary is just like the most important action you want the user to use on the screen.
Okay.
Primary, secondary, then tertiary, like in the area of most important to least important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And have you seen forms, or let's say cards on Google? If you search through Google, have you seen cards or how do I put it now? Areas where they don't have primary CTAs at all. They just have all tertiary CTAs or all secondary CTAs. Have you seen something like that before?
I'm trying to recall or bring to my memory.
I mean, I can find you many. I think Google is very notorious for having a lot of secondary CTAs without primary CTAs. Do you think, why do you think that would be? Or even tertiary CTAs? You can find cards, for instance, that don't have, they don't have primary CTAs. They don't have secondary. All the CTAs, they are tertiary.
Oh,
Why would they do that?
Sorry for my question. So for like the Google page, can't you just assume the search button is the primary CTA?
Oh yeah, of course. The search button is typically a primary CTA on Google, but there are cards. I'm not talking of Google, the website now. I'm talking like if you go into a couple of Google apps, like Google has a lot of apps, right?
Yeah, true.
I wish I could share my screen now, but
and likes.
There are a lot of times when you see that Google has all tertiary CTAs or all secondary CTAs, no primary CTA. Why would you think they do that? Well, the reason is that a lot of times, like they don't want to push you into any particular direction. So sometimes you don't want to push the user into any direction. You want them to be the one to make up their minds, to the decision they want to take, especially if it's a decision that is, very significant, is going to affect their security or affect their finances or something like that. And you as a designer, you don't have any dog in the fight. A lot of times Google has like, is more like a facilitator, a third party, so they don't have a dog in the fight. So anyone the user takes, they don't care. So in such a situation, all will be tertiary CTAs so that the user can make up, read everything and make up their mind by themselves, right? I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Brian, for that addition. So let's go ahead from where we stopped. Um, designing
Chief, I think you are breaking a lot.
for you could, as part of the, what do you call that thing again? What do I call it? Element, depending on what you're designing for. And you still be the one to specify the event that it's uploading, this is what it should look like. When it is completed, this is exactly what it should look like. You should have a button to delete. You're making all the specifications. And when it fails, this is what it also look like. You're going to design all of this yourselves, and do a handoff, walk your team through it, and walk your developers through it as well. Yes, Kosi. Kosi, you have a question? Your hand is up.
I wanted to just to confirm what the meaning of CTA or something.
Yes, CTA means call to action. Call to action.
Okay,
yes.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Call to actions, or they are simply buttons. A lot of times they are simply buttons. So if you notice, like a button will typically have a writing on it. For instance, the button you are looking at, it says share. Share is a call to action. So a lot of times designers use buttons or they use CTAs because they are pretty much almost always the same thing.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brian. I think last thing I'll show you guys here is progress bars before I get into practical explanation. I mean practical illustrations of the design system. So here you could easily see how the progress bars are being designed. No progress, little progress, a little more progress, a little more progress, close to finishing progress, and completed progress. All these your labels, you could add labels to them, 80%, 20%. You could have your circular progress bars. You would be the one to determine all of this. So very quickly, before we wrap up this session, I want to show you guys a typical system and break it down to you. Let me open this particular. So I'll show you guys this system and break down how these elements are to get put together. Is what so part of my network is coming up. Let me show you this. Is there any question? Okay. Let me see if I can show you guys. Anyone of this first three people? It's okay to be. Sorry about that. Okay, this one is up. So I think your network seems unstable because your words are breaking at some point. Sorry about that. Is it better now? Before I get into this particular section, please someone confirm that I'm audible now. Where is Yinka? Can you hear me? Kosi,
Yes, you're
Yes, I
audible.
can.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
better now. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. So now let's look at this system together. So I'll bring out all the foundational elements I've been talking about for the past 50 minutes. Starting from this side now, okay, let's start from layout. We specified that our side nav should be a certain number of width 272. So in no event should it exceed 272. We specify that for spacing, our elements should have 32 pixels to the side for start elements. Then, because this is smaller screen, I think this will be 1440 or so. Let me quickly confirm that. Yes, 1440. So you specify that for elements in a smaller screen like this, away from the sidebar should be 32, then interacting with each other should be 24, like we are seeing here. So this is a standard specification. Follow my cursor, please. Try to pay much attention to the screen. 24, 24, 24. Can you see the multiples of 8? Then this is 32. This is the first. Now, the next element I talked about was the icons. Now, if you look at all of this, the icons in use here are very consistent. They have, the only difference is their design, because they can't all look the same way. They are to represent different things. This shows this shows transaction. But I want you all to take note that the sizes and weight are the same. The colors too are the same. Now you specify that for active icon should be blue. That's the one that is being clicked on should be blue. And the ones inactive have this color of black or gray. It's still left for you to specify. Now the next thing is your typography. I think I mentioned that this could be a display text because it's large. It's something you want to draw attention. This is money. So you specify that, okay, your display text, your H1 in this case was 32 pixels. Then you say, okay, other text could drop, could decline. You could have 24, you could have 20. You'd all set that. You could say, okay, for name text should be H4, which is 20 pixels. For display text could be H1, which is 32 pixels. It has been specified in the system I talked about. The next thing here is active and inactive states. Now, this is a combination of icons and text. This kind of text could be label text. Now, this label, you could make it, let me see what was used here so I don't say incorrect things. Yeah, 12 pixels, typical of a label text. So with a check green icon, which means it's active, you could design a counter state for this where the icon is not this green, it could be gray, meaning inactive. So those are all the states you could put up for this. So I've talked about I've talked about read, I've talked about typography. Then buttons, yes, this is a big button here. This could be your large CTA. You specify that, okay, I want my button to have the button text should be evenly distributed 10 10 10 all around. Then the icon should have, yes, same thing. Now this is a button too, but it serves as a drop down, but it's also a button. So once you click on it, it would filter by year, by time frame, by either annually, monthly. All of this was specified in your design system. You specify that this is what this should look like. This is another drop down too. Let me see what else I can pick out of here that was talked about. Yes, all of these are secondary call to actions, secondary CTAs. On high, I just limit more. They are call to actions, but they are secondary because they are not things you want to naturally do when you just come upon the page. The first thing you want to do here is move money. That is why it's your primary CTA. And it has been specified in your design system that the CTA should be this color. It should have this certain, what's it called? Certain size, certain look and feel. Then, okay, I forgot to bring this up. Let me show you guys from our design system. Avatars. You could specify that for mobile devices, your avatars could be really large, 32 by 32, 64 by 64, anyhow you want to do it, but it has to be specified. That's the whole aim of a design system. This is what we design for messaging. So when someone is typing, this is what it looks like. When a message is sent to you, this is what it looks like. When you reply a message, this is what it looks like. Now let me show you a use case for this particular session. previous dashboard. I'm sure you can use case before I get back to the previous dashboard. Now look at this here. So, like I said, it was specified already. This is when a message was sent to you. This is when you send the message. This is when you try to upload the file. This is what it shows like after it has been uploaded. This is when someone is typing. Look at this. This is the input text field. So it's active. You're typing as it's active, is being lit up by purple color. This is a call to action by the side. So like I said earlier, when you put together all of this, it's what gives you a design system. So let's back here. Is there anything I mentioned? So that's basically it. So I'll be entertaining questions from this point. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Feel free to ask about anything, design system, style guides, or any question in general.
Okay, I have a question.
All right.
So when you're designing, do you design like maybe the first page first before you create your design system and then you keep updating your design system, or you create a design system first before you start designing? How does it work?
Wait, sorry, I didn't get your question. Your voice was breaking up. Can you come again?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay, I said when you're designing, do you design the first page first, then from there you create the design system and then you start updating it? Or you create the design system first before you start designing? Let's say like you're designing from scratch.
Okay. So let me give you a practical answer based on what we did here. When you're designing most systems, in most cases, you're not even sure of all the features that might go into the system. But there are some things you know you can't do without. You know that you can't do without setting down your spacing. You can't do without your buttons. You can't do without text. So those primary things you can't do without, you lay them down first. Then you go into designing the system. Like this particular system,
Okay.
while we were designing, you can see how scattered this is. Because what we had in mind, okay, we're designing a web app that does certain things for certain people. We knew, okay, we'll have a navigation bar, but we're not sure the kind of elements that were there. We knew, okay, we'll need an icon library. So the icon library was already on ground before we started work. So I'll just say the two go hand in hand, but you must specify the primary things first before you get into designing.
Okay.
Okay, can I add to that?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of times, yeah, I mean, the whole point of having a design system is for uniformity, especially when you have a big team, more than one designer, and everyone is contributing to designing the apps or the websites, of that company. What typically happens, how it typically happens, right, is that a company has gone far, they've already had a website, and then they've had apps and all of that. And then their design team starts to grow. And then all of a sudden, they now find out that, when they do a design audit, they find out that, they have one button there, and then another button there, and then a different button there, and there is no consistency in their design. So in that scenario, they now come together and say, you know what, let's kind of fix this up, and then they pick a button. That's literally what happened with us at Wella Health. So we found out that we've had a lot of these apps, a lot of these websites, and then when we did a design audit, we found out that different buttons, the buttons are different in different websites, and a lot of things we had are different. So we now decided to put them all together and pick, certain designs for certain use cases, right? That's kind of how it typically happens. In the case where I asked Peace then to design that Stripe website, yeah, it's the design is already there, right? So Stripe already has a website, and this is a case where you have like many pages that you want to design. So instead of everyone going to design their own buttons or going to design their own cards, it makes sense to kind of have some sort of a style guide, some sort of a, so that they are not inventing yellows from the scratch, or they are not inventing buttons from the scratch. So everybody can just go and pick, the button based on the system that they've already designed. So you see kind of how it typically happens. Of course, now that design systems have become more and more popular, some companies want to kind of start from the scratch when they are, building up their website or their brand. They want to also have a style guide and a design system, and in such a case, it now makes sense to, build the design system first, like, specify what you want your buttons to be, what you want this one to be, before you now start, going on with the website. So these days, you find companies specifying what their system is going to look like, because at the end of the day, whatever product it is you're building, many people have built it before. So we've seen all those cards, we've seen all those buttons, and kind of the kind of features you would need to put in your design system. But typically, a lot of companies start off without systems, and then at some point they realize that they need some consistency and uniformity, and then they go and then have design systems for themselves.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Brian. Is there any other question? To recap, today we just covered the importance of design systems, style guides. Okay, please ask.
Yeah, like my question is in relation to the last question, where Mr. Brian said you have to state it down first. So me, I feel like if you're designing, maybe it makes more sense that maybe you can, start off with, comparing with a different, let's say you compare with a page, and maybe you generate a page first. Then maybe by then you have, because if you have a rigid system initially that you want to follow, and you start following it, and along the line, maybe you find out that is not giving you the feel of what you have, maybe how do you now change? Is it possible to, since, I don't know, just like components, when you edit something, it changes is it possible to also, I don't know if you can change, if you can automatically switch between two styles? I don't know if you understand
you've answered your own question now. So the whole idea of having components in the first place, the whole idea of having components is for change. When change happens, you don't have to go in and start changing every button, every place, right? The whole idea of having the components in the first place was so that if you decide that you want your buttons to be blue and not yellow again, every button becomes yellow. So yes, design systems are a living, breathing documents. Like, they don't remain constant. If you look at, I saw a McDonald's back recently, and I couldn't believe that this was even McDonald's. Like, companies change their design systems all the time to kind of refresh. Even companies change their logos, how much more design systems, right? To kind of give a fresh look, right? So yeah, it happens. The idea of having the design system is so that the way it looks today is going to continue looking like that across their platform. There is going to be uniformity across their platforms. It's not supposed to be like something that remains stagnant and doesn't change. It can change, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Kosi. Thank you, Brian. So to quickly recap, today we've been able to cover the importance of design systems, style guides, and components. Is there any other question before we put the session to a close? Peace, do you have a question? Lolade, do you have any question? Yinka, are you good? Lolade, please go ahead. You muted your mic.
Okay. Hello, Victor.
Yes.
Hello, Victor. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
if you have like if you have a lot of time in your hands, right? But I feel maybe I mean we've seen what design systems kind of look like, but building up those style guides, like some people might have challenges, actually, creating style guides and naming those styles and all of that. I don't know if we can go through a bit of what it looks like, to create style guides on Figma,
Could
for
you
text.
could you assist me with that, because I'm having another session the next few minutes.
Okay. Okay. So maybe I'll just add it to another class or something. Maybe put it on the later class. Yeah, because yeah, we need to also look at that. All right, no wala.
All right, guys. In the
All right. Okay.
any further questions?
Okay.
Yes,
A question. Yeah. So basically now, since design system is helping us gather our components in a well-documented form that can be interpreted and used by other members, is it safe to say that every element that will be on the design system is supposed to be, every element that will be on the products, on the design, is supposed to be in the design system? Like
Yes.
what can we have and what can't we have that we can just do away with?
Every element has to be on the design system. I'm not sure there's anything you can do away with.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically we're starting like more or less like putting it up somewhere, and then on the design we're just basically assembling.
Exactly. Down to your pictures, down to your sections. Let me quickly show you something. There's a section here I want to show you. Nothing. Okay. Just give it a minute. So, how this on this section? That's fast. Your hero section to your support section. All of those have the system. In a web section, attached for me.
Sorry, I can barely hear you.
Bring up and show you guys. You have 25 styles for no. Hello, am I audible?
No, you're not. Your network is breaking. It's not audible.
Hold on. Let me switch network. Okay, am I audible now?
Yes, you're. If
That's
sounds
perfect.
Okay. So what I was trying to say before my network interrupted is all your sections have to be accounted for in your design system. From your hero section to your social proof section to your core content section, they have to be accounted for. Even in your brand designing. So, typical example, when designing hero section, there are three ways most teams design. You could do text by the left, image by the right, image by the left, text by the right, or text above, image below. All those three will be specified in the design system. So anybody that picks up a website in your team to work on can leverage any of those styles by you, and the spacing and padding is already documented for. When you move into other sections, you could say, okay, in some cases you can use bento grids, and this is how the bento grids have to be arranged. In some cases, you can stack it up horizontally. You know, all your sections must be accounted for in your design system. So I believe I've answered the questions. So I'll have to run off now. Thank you guys for your time and participation. If you have any more questions or need further assistance, please feel free to reach out to either Sir Brian or myself. Okay. So I'm ending the session now. Happy weekend, guys.